Hi, I'm the guy that does the Our True History videos, which cover from anything from Anunnaki, Bigfoot, spirits, orbs, and these are the sort of stuff you don't get taught in school. So I was doing a live the other day, and someone said to me that they was going to put my name forward to a podcast that person listens to, and they said they thought I would be, good on that other person's podcast show. So I said, more than welcome to put me out there if you want, not a problem. I just enjoy talking about these subjects. So that got me thinking that there's probably other people that would like me on their show to debate, talk, join in, whatever. So if you do, just put a message on any of my posts, or on this post even, and I will add you as a friend and we can chat, direct messaging type thing. Okay, and obviously if you want to be on mine, let me know as well. More than happy to have people talk about these subjects on mine. Thanks. Enlil called for a meeting of the gods, and their children also turned up. Even Ayana was there with her brothers, and this was a meeting about Marduk, what to do about him, because he was now trying to be supreme god of the whole planet, and he'd also started to rebuild his sky tower, which we know is the Tower of Babel, but he was trying to rebuild that. And obviously they can't allow that, because they didn't allow it the first time. They took it down with weapons, but this time they needed to really stop Marduk, because he's got taken over many of the lands. And the idea then was, let's reuse the weapons, or let's use the weapons that Alalula brought down when he first came here. Now if you don't know what these weapons of terror are, watch my very first videos onwards and you'll find out Alalula came here. Was the first Anunnaki here, and on his ship he had these weapons of terror, but they didn't use them back then, 400 and odd thousand years before. The weapons of terror were hidden in a cave, and after 400,000 years they actually still worked. Now Enki didn't know that Enlil knew where they were, so unfortunately Enlil did, so he sent his son Ninurta and another Anunnaki to the cave mountain to get them ready. And they actually even named the 7 of these weapons, and the first one was called the one without rival, was the first one. The Blaming Flame called the second one, and these are important because each one of these did something different. The one with Terror Crumbles he called the third. Mountain Melter the fourth, literally it did, and you'll find out soon. Wind of the Rim of the World Seeks the name of the fifth. The one above and below No One Spares was the sixth, and the seventh with the monstrous venom was filled. And these are important, these names, because the Bible even talks about this. Just before the word was given, they tried to evacuate some of these cities to stop everyone dying, because they were really just trying to stop Marduk from progressing his armies. And even some of the Igi, which were young Anunnaki that had technology, keep that in mind for the next few videos, they had to leave home because their home was about to be destroyed. Keep that in mind. So anyway, Enlil finally gave the message, and off Ninurta went with another Anunnaki with these 7 weapons, and they would drop the first weapon over a location, a city that they wanted to, and it totally annihilated the city. And there's huge descriptions of what actually happened in the Lost Book of Enki, of what happens with each of these disastrous weapons as they take out city after city. Of all the weapons of terror that the Anunnaki unleashed at that time, the worst one was the last, because it had radiation, and it was pushing, the winds was pushing them out towards actually where the Anunnaki were staying, and it would wipe out cattle, it would wipe out plants. The radiation, the descriptions in the stone tablets say basically the thickest wall wouldn't stop this plague, shall we say, from rotting people's flesh and the tongues falling out, etc. It was quite horrific. And eventually the Anunnaki worked out that the wind was blowing it their way, and they called red alert. Basically they bugged out on their skyships up to either into space or as far away they could. Now this is all written in the Bibles. Of course the Bible called it a plague because they had no idea what it was, and bearing in mind the Bible was written a copy of a copy of a copy, and it was a couple of thousand years later, but basically it all says about the same thing. 600 videos, thank you very much for everyone. Okay, so we're going to find out where this Abydos carvings come into play. Now, people say that these are from someone that went into the future and saw our helicopters, but let's be honest, they would have had to have come pretty much in the last 100 years, because in another 20 or 30 years we won't have helicopters. So that's pretty precise for us to know that. But they didn't, because we can tell exactly what this is from ancient texts. Now, we have to believe the ancient texts because they were found in 1800s, and they have a fully fledged language which linguistics agree that was the first language, and then we had Babylonian and Aramaic, etc., that followed on from that. So this was the first language. So we have to agree that these ancient texts are real and tell us everything that we need to know. Now, if you go to the ancient texts, the one particular passage says Enki and Enlil descended in helicopters, and the actual abbreviation or the actual translation is whirlwinds. Now, the helicopters are described in the ancient texts as having a sort of a propeller type thing, and it's a single-seater craft. So we can now safely say that that is an Anunnaki. Now, that makes sense because the Anunnaki were around and flying around, and we know all that because of the ancient texts during the time of the Egyptians. In fact, Marduk became Ra, so we know all of this. So that now rules out the time travel. It's basically someone's carved, whether they had permission or not, but someone carved one of the flying devices. Now, we've got these other craft here. Now, this may not be all the craft that the Anunnaki had, but these are the crafts that we can see here. So let's have a look at what crafts these. So remember this one here. Let's have a look. Now, there it is, and this is a recreation of it by Giorgio, and they're putting it in a wind tunnel at the moment to test the aerodynamics of it, and actually surprisingly it works. So we can now rule that one out. Let's look what else the Anunnaki had. They had these single-seater rocket little powered ships, and let's have a look what else they had. They also had this type of device, flying device. So we can now say with some degree of certainty that the Abydos carvings are just recreations of what whoever saw the Anunnaki flying around in. Watch the next video and I'll explain what Atlantis is and where they came from, etc., etc.